Hello everybody, this is TTTTTSD, also known as T5. I'm recording this video because a few friends of mine expressed interest in this potential topic, so I felt like I would be, not a good friend if I didn't explain exactly what I meant and why, with like video demonstration and input display. But this video is covering alternative training methods for entry-level / players that want to learn a new peripheral with regards to fighting games. And I'm going to be focusing on learning the arcade stick, the classic, fighting game peripheral that people tend to associate with fighting games. You can see the inputs down there. And I'm going to discuss an alternative method of breaking in a stick, that it does not involve playing a fighting game or grinding it out and getting frustrated at a game or whatever. I'm going to go over MMX4 as a method of adapting to a way a stick feels, and how to do inputs on it, and all sorts of stuff. And I'm going to be going over both 0 and X in this video, because both of them are useful for different things. We're going to start with 0 though, because the aim of this video is to be directed towards beginners, primarily, so newer players, or people who are new to the arcade stick controller. I've never played on one before, because, the arcade era is pretty old. So we're going to start with 0, who I consider to be a more traditional approach to learning an arcade stick with this game. Because again, I learned how to play on a stick from MMX4. So let's break it down, nice and simply. I need to rebind my buttons in the game. Thankfully this game is pretty good and lets you rebind. So I'm just going to rebind all of my buttons right now. So we got all my buttons rebound. So, ideally, when you're playing 0, now you can use any control scheme you want if you're binding your stick, however you want to learn it. But the way I did was I bound my top 3 buttons to dash on the right, jump in the middle, and slash right here. This is your standard attack. But so you can use any control scheme you want, as long as it helps you learn. But I recommend this because it's a very natural flow, and I'll explain more about that later. But let's start by breaking down the controls and the reason I map the buttons this way. So you have your slash, your jump, and your dash, right? These are all important movements in Mega Man X. They all kind of blend together. You want them to go in sequence, right? The classic Mega Man X sequence is dash, jump, and attack all together. Because you use the dash to retain your momentum, and you attack like that. So why is this helpful in a fighting game sense? Well, you're learning how to piano input. Because 0's grounded slash is very good. And obviously there's, the slash dash cancel and all sorts of stuff. But his air slash is a much better hitbox, less recovery, can be done more times, and because enemies in this game don't tend to have a lot of HP, it will shred through them very quickly. So you're encouraged to do, jump slashes to kill things. So you're going to be doing piano inputs almost all the time if you're using 0. Even if you map the buttons alternatively, it will always be a piano input. Dash, jump, attack. Very quickly in succession like this. As you can see, it's extremely effective at dealing with enemies. One misconception I want to clear up, 0 does not have fighting game inputs. A lot of people seem to think he does. He does not. His special moves are just a direction and the learn to move button, which I've mapped to this, doing nothing because I don't have any moves. But those are like the general rules of 0. He does not have fighting game motions, but playing a platformer as precise as this, even though the platforming is not extremely strenuous, you are going to be doing a lot of movement on the stick, like this. Back and forth, all sorts of directions. So you're going to get a very, very strong familiarity with the grip of your stick and how you like to hold it best, because you're going to be doing a lot of movement in this game. So now that I've explained all of this and how these mechanics gel together, I'm going to do a sample playthrough of this stage, just to show you an idea of how, you'll learn and adapt to your peripheral as you play. Start by getting hit, sure. This is completely improvised, so pardon me if I make any errors. I have not played X4 in a while, but you can follow the inputs on the left there, or on the right there, and you'll know exactly what I'm doing. Oh jeez, I'm getting hit a lot. This is slop. This is definitely what we would call slop. But that's the general rule of thumb. This isn't a very extensive video. It's more or less just, you know, an outline of how you can practice using a controller in a different way, but still apply that knowledge and those learned skills to, you know, a different kind of game entirely. And when you play Zero on stick, I feel like you can definitely tell that Capcom is a company that makes a lot of fighting games, because Zero feels extremely natural on an arcade stick. If you're watching just how, like, smoothly all these actions are coming out, and the way my inputs just sort of flow like that. The gameplay loop that Zero has in particular, I think, is very intuitive to an arcade stick. So it's a great way of, like, learning, you know, how your controller feels, what you like about it. Getting used to the grip of the stick and how to hold it. Everybody holds their stick very differently. I use 3-finger grip myself, but everyone's different. But playing a game like this will help you, you know, master, you know, your cardinal directions, which is very important when you're starting to draw out motions, because it's the same principle, really. And your button presses. You can get through all of that by just playing Zero in this game. And it's a lot of fun to play Zero on stick. So yeah, that's Zero on arcade stick. Now, I would obviously show off all the special weapons if I had the time to go through the game and, you know, unlock all of those. But I'm gonna pause the recording and transition to Mega Man X, who will, you know, obviously, I'll be using the same controls, but I'll be explaining what X will allow you to do, and why he's not necessarily who I would recommend to somebody new to this controller, or this type of controller, but if you want to, you can. And I'll explain why X is good for learning different kinds of inputs. I'll be right back. I'm back. We're going to select X now. So Mega Man X is different from Zero. He does not have a melee weapon. He does not have the Z-Saber. Instead, he uses the X-Buster. So, Mega Man X, I always find, with X, he feels better on controller to me. But if you want to learn about less orthodox inputs for fighting games, or just games in general, X is definitely, you know, good for stick in that regard. So unlike Zero, he doesn't have a sword. He instead uses the X-Buster, which means you're going to be doing individual button presses a lot, you know, to damage enemies. However, he also can charge it by holding it down. So what this will do is this will teach you how to, you know, negative edge moves. There's a lot of charge moves like that in fighting games. Not very common across casts of characters, but there's always, you know, the turn punch moves. And they're executed in similar ways to charging in the X-Buster. So if you'd like to practice that, X can definitely be useful for that. Get your fingers used to the kind of muscle memory required to, like, charge a move in that way. And he's great for learning how to mash good, too, because the X-Buster, obviously, to shoot it very quickly, you have to mash very fast. The similar piano input, you know, trifecta applies with Zero, so I use the same control mappings I would with Zero with X, because it's just intuitive to have your dash and your jump lined up like that, because you want to be able to roll your fingers and get to come out. But that sort of, you know, theory still applies with X, although you don't have to do directional inputs and the learned moves like Zero would. X instead just has special weapons, so the training with X sort of stops after you get over, you know, button hold and button release, but that is useful in its own way. If you feel the need to practice that kind of thing and you want a different training method for it. It's definitely a lot to keep your mind on, though, but it helps, you know, polish up your gameplay and your understanding of your inputs. And again, an input viewer is highly recommended so you can comb through later and look at, you know, how you did stuff. Like, I find I'm using Charge Buster a lot more on stick than I would on a regular controller because of how different mashing is on the stick. But I'll finish this up just to complete my sample. and call it a wrap on the video. It's a very quick recording, just because every now and then in my friend circle I get questions about, you know, what do you mean you played X4 to learn how to play it on arcade stick? And if you watch the input, you can see maybe just a bit of how it would actually contribute to learning an arcade stick. And why you should never discount alternative training methods. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little piece of content. If you're new to fighting games and new to playing on arcade stick, I hope this helped. If you're not and you were just interested in, like, you know, picking my brain on this, I hope that was also an interesting enough explanation and description of everything. Thank you very much. Have a good day.